Well, hello algebra class. We're going to go ahead and kind of do something a little different today. I'm going to actually teach from two different sections in the book the same concept and give you two assignments. The only difference between these two sections is the earlier section 9.3 is just a little simpler problems, and 9.4 the problems have just bigger numbers. There's no real difference here. Okay, this is entitled Solving Trinomials, and this is not actually the name of any of the sections in your book. But what we're going to do is we're going to show you what it means to solve a trinomial. So you're going to get a problem that's going to look like this: x squared plus 16x plus 28 equals 0. In fact, this happens to be problem number 37 on your first assignment, problem 37. No, I take that back. It's not the first problem, but it is problem 37 on page 493, 494. Okay, page 493 and 494. Okay, now what we're going to do here is we're going to figure out what x can be. Well, x actually has two answers here, and so we are going to factor this after it's got to be set equal to 0 like this one is, and then we're going to factor it and solve it. Okay, so I'm going to play that product sum game. Here we go. I'm going to take a, which is 1, times c, a times c. 1 times 28 is 28. Now you can follow along on your factoring toolbox. Here's where we're at right here. We're doing factoring a trinomial, multiplying a times c right here. Now we're going to play the product sum game with this AC and B. If their product is 28, I'm going to multiply them together to get 28, and I'm going to add them together. Their sum is 16. What would two numbers have to be? It's a little puzzle, right? So let me think of all the possible combinations of 28. Well, there's 1 times 28. There's 2 times 14. Oh, that looks like it right there. 2 times 14 will give me 28. And 2 plus 14 will give me 16. So my two numbers are 2 and 14. Now, we're going to rewrite the problem. Again, we're walking through the steps here. Step 3, rewrite the trinomial, splitting the middle term. If you don't have this toolbox at your disposal, you need to pull it out. Okay? So we're going to rewrite this and split the middle term. 16x is the same as 2x and 14x, so I'm going to write 2x plus 14x. It doesn't matter the order you write those in. So you could write 14x plus 2x, it doesn't matter as long as they're both there. And it's been split now. That's split into these two things. So I haven't really changed the problem. I just changed this into two parts in the middle. All right, now we're going to, it says here, now factor by grouping. Okay, so we're going to go back up here and factor by grouping. Here we go. Number 1, underline the two groups. There's your two groups. Step 2, okay, take the GCF out of the left group. There it is right here. Take the GCF, the greatest common factor, out of the left group. So I'm going to pull out x here, and that leaves me with x plus 2. If you're looking at your sheet, the next step says copy the leftovers. These are the leftovers right here. Copy the leftovers underneath the right group. So I'm copying the leftovers here. I'm leaving a gap here though. Okay. And then step number 4 says ask what had to come out of this group, the right group, that second group. What had to come out of this second group to give me these leftovers? Well, it looks like it's been divided by 4. So I'm going to put positive 4 here, had to come out. I basically undistributed 14. That's what happened here. Okay. Now, this is still equal to 0. Okay. Now, the last step of factoring is to marry the groups together. So here's x plus 14 is a marriage, and x plus 2 is also a marriage. If this is a little fuzzy to you, you may need to go back and look at the previous videos on factoring trinomials. sections 9.3 and 9.4. All right, now that's not too new there, but what is new is what's going to come up right now. We are going to use a property called the zero product property, and I'm going to erase this right here so we have some room to talk about that. Now, isn't it true that if you multiply two things together, I'll just put blanks there for now, and their product is 0, that you know that one of these two must be 0. Either this is 0, or this is 0, or in fact they both could be 0. Okay? They could both be 0, but one of them has to be 0. This is called the zero product property, where it says that one of these must be 0. Either this is 0, or this is 0, or they both could be 0. So now look back down here at our original problem. Either this is 0, or this is 0, because their product is 0. This is the zero product property. We're going to take advantage of this. This is the one concept on this assignment that we're teaching you today, is that either this could be 0 or this could be 0. Well, if this is 0, wouldn't that have to be negative 14? And if this is 0, wouldn't that have to be a negative, x have to be a negative 2? So the formal way of doing that is set each one equal to 0. Notice I'm splitting it. We're going to get two answers here. And solve it. Subtract 14 from both sides. Subtract 2 from both sides, and that's what we said. If x is a negative 2, that makes this 0. If x is a negative 14, that makes this 0. So either of these answers would make this statement true, because one of these two would be equal to 0. Oh, the sun just came out here. Let me change the lighting a little bit. So we've got two answers, and that's what we were looking for. We're looking to find the two answers using the zero product property. Now I'm going to do a couple more of these, but they're all done the same. I'm going to leave that this rule up over here for you. That's our rule for the day. I'm just going to leave that there, and let's try another problem. All right, here's a problem that is on your assignment also. It's number 12. Let's go ahead and tackle this one. All right, the first step is to make sure that it's equal to 0, and it is. Then we're going to factor this thing. Okay, well, let's see here. 1 times negative 42 is negative 42. A times C, right? This is A, B, and C. A times C. A times C is 42, okay? And if the product is negative 42, that means I'm going to multiply these two things together to give me negative 42. That means one of these has to be negative for me to get a negative answer. And their sum has to be a negative 19. This right here, negative 19. Their sum has to be a negative 19. So if the sum is negative, I may have two different numbers that are, well, they've got to be different signs here, so that means that one of them is going to be positive and one's going to be negative. Well, what are the combinations of 42? Well, let's see. 1 and a negative 42. That's a sum of negative 41. That doesn't work. 2 and a negative 21. Those would work. And their sum is negative 19. That's it right there. 2 and negative 21. So a negative 21 times 2 and a negative 21 plus 2. Those are my two numbers, negative 21 and 2. So we're going to go ahead and rewrite the problem splitting the middle term. Here we go. P squared minus 21p plus 2p minus 42 equals 0. All right, now we're ready to factor by grouping. I'm going to underline the two groups. What had to come out of this group? Well, the only thing that came out was p, and leave us with p minus 21. And then I'm going to copy the leftovers over here, p minus 21. Don't think about it, just copy it. And what do you have to pull out of this group to get this? Well, you had to pull out a positive 2. So we end up with p plus 2 when we marry these, and p minus 21. Bring down that equals 0. All right, now we're ready to use the zero product property over here. Either of these could be negative. Or excuse me, either of these could be 0. Either of these, so we're going to set each one equal to 0, split the problem, and solve it. And p's got to be a negative 2. And adding 21 to both sides, we get p equals 21. So if we put negative 2 back in here, that's 0. If we put 21 back in here, that's 0. So there's my 2 answers. There are 2 answers for these problems, and that's your goal, is to find those 2 answers. Okay, now some of the problems are going to have a little work to do at the very top. So let's go do one. All right, here's a problem that you're going to have. It's number 13. You can do it with me. You'll notice that this problem is not equal to 0, and we can only use the zero product property if there's a 0 alone on one side. So we want to get the factors equal to 0. Factors multiplied together equals 0. So I need to get this to be equal to 0. So I'm going to add 10y to both sides, and because these are not like terms, I'm just going to put them next to each other here. I'm moving the 10y over to the left by adding it, and there you go. 10y has been added to the left side now. Now this thing, this trinomial here, is ready to be factored because it's equal to 0. So your first step is you got to get it equal to 0 first. Okay, so we did that. All right, now the second thing we're going to do is factor it. Okay, so here we go. 1 times 9 is 9. AC is 9. What are the factors of 9? When I multiply, I get 9, but when I add, I get 10. Well, that's pretty easy. That's positive 9 times a positive 1. When I add them, I get 10. When I multiply them, I get 9. So 9 and 1 are my 2 numbers. So we're going to rewrite this and split the middle term. And now we're ready to factor by grouping. So underline the 2 groups. Take out the GCF here. Copy the leftovers. What had to come out of this group? Well, the only thing that came out must have been a positive 1. Don't forget to write the plus sign there, okay? And this is still equal to 0. So now when we marry the groups, we're going to get y plus 1 and y plus 9 equals 0. So setting each of these equal to 0, I can see that this one's going to be negative 1 just by looking at it. And I can see that this one's going to be negative 9 just by looking at it. I want each of these to be 0. So I had to set each one of them equal to 0, and I get 2 answers. So after you factor it, you're gonna use the zero product property to solve. And that means you're going to set each factor equal to 0 and solve. Now, write those notes down so you have them. Those are the things that you're going to be doing here. All right, let's do another one, one that's a little harder. Okay. All right, I pulled an assignment here from the next page in the book. This is from page 499, problem 12. Now I said this is harder, but this process is exactly the same. The only thing that's different is we've got a little bit bigger numbers to work with. This number up front is not a 1 any longer, so we've got a little more work to do. But it's really the same process. So here we go. Step 1 here, get it equal to 0 first. Okay. So I'm going to move this over to the left. 6n squared plus 7n, subtracting 20 from both sides, There it is. It's set equal to 0. Now we have to factor it. There we go. We're going to factor this. A times C. Well, A times C, 6 times negative 20 is a negative 120. I want two factors whose product is a negative 120 and whose sum is 7. Right there. See that? Sum is 7. Product is a negative 120. Sum is 7. Well, first of all, if their product is negative, then one of these two has to be negative. One of them has to be negative for me to get a negative product. So what are some of the possibilities? Well, I could start with 1, but let's start a little bit higher than that. Let's see, how about negative 4 times 30? Well, their product is right, but their sum is 26. It's way too big. Let's see. Let's divide this one by 2 and call it 15, and multiply this one by 2 and call it negative 8. Little trick I showed you before. These two give me 120. I just divided this one by 2 and multiplied this one by 2 just to come up with two other factors. And now you can see that their product is still negative 120, and their sum is now 7. So our two numbers are negative 8 and 15. Negative 8 and 15. You'll have to do a little bit more work in coming up with those two numbers when they get a little bigger like this. Alright, so my two numbers are negative 8 and positive 15. So let's go ahead and split the middle term. 6n squared minus 8n plus 15n minus 20 equals 0. So there you go. I split that middle term again into these two terms. Alright, now we're ready to factor by grouping. I'm right here on my sheet. I just finished rewriting and splitting the middle term. Now we're ready to factor by grouping. See above. I'm going back up here to factor by grouping. Alright. Underline the two groups. Take the GCF out of the first group. Well, there's a 2 in both of these and also an n. So 2n comes out, and that leaves us with 3n minus 4. Then I copy the leftovers to the right. And what had to be pulled out of this binomial to get these leftovers? Well, I had to take out a 5, positive 5. 5 times 3 is 15. That's right. 5 times negative 4 is 20. There you go. So there it is, pulled apart. And now we're going to go ahead and marry the groups and the two kinds of marriages that we talked about. Alright, so I have two factors now. Now, using the zero product property, again, if one of those has to be 0, either one of these is 0, then I'm going to set each one equal to 0. Now, it's not so easy to tell on these what the right answer is, so setting them equal to 0 is the way to do it. Subtract 5 from both sides. 2n equals a negative 5. And divide by 2, and I get n equals a negative 5 halves. Just leave your answer as a fraction there. Same thing over here. Add 4 to both sides. 3n equals 4. Divide both sides by 3. N is 4/3. There's your two answers. Okay? We've got two answers. And we're doing the same thing on both assignments from your book. They're just these second ones are just a little bit bigger numbers, and that's it. So follow the steps. This is where advanced algebra kids happen to be doing this very same thing now, but they're not learning it for the first time. They're doing it for the second time, and they've gotten pretty slick at it. So you need to learn it here now, so you're ready for advanced algebra when you get there. we don't spend that much time on it in advanced algebra, so you got to learn it here in Algebra 1. All right, let's take a look at your homework for today. All right, well, so here are the next two assignments. I'm not going to give another video for the second one here. Go ahead and tackle the first one on the first night, and then you can work on this second one. We're going to move on to a new topic here next time, so make sure you're going to have a couple days and the weekend to work on these, so make sure you do that, okay? Try to remember that you're going to have to kind of dig in here. Being at home and working from home is a challenging thing to do. It's challenging for all of us, but it's very important that you learn to develop the discipline and the skills to do these at home. You can always come back and check out these, check out my videos, and then if you got a question still, email me. I did get a question or an email the other day. Thank you for that, and I will try to get back to you and teach you on an email, or just make a time where I can meet you in a Zoom meeting. So, all right, have a good one. Take care.